he talks about how he was over, I don't know how many Satanists, call them churches. He was like the bishop.
You gotta be kidding me.
What was in her heart? You don't know what sin she'd committed. You don't know how much unbelief was there. You don't know whether she hated her husband.
I don't think so.
Why would anybody spend so much time ranting and raving about something that they don't believe in?
Really?
Welcome to Skeptics Brew Pub with Brother Brewer. Hey guys, welcome to episode 33 of Skeptics Brew Pub. Tonight's episode is actually pre-recorded, so there won't be any video accompanying it, and I do apologize for that. I'm still trying to figure out how to record video and audio to post to YouTube and still have it work the way that Google Hangouts does. But in any case, tonight my guests are going to be Trav, Mamone, and Morgan Stringer from the Bi Skeptical podcast. So here they are. Welcome to episode 33 of Skeptics Brew Pub. I'm your host, Brother Brewer, and tonight I am joined by the cast of the Bi Skeptical podcast. I have Trav, Mamone, and Morgan Stringer on the line. How you guys doing tonight?
Hi, doing all right.
Yeah, doing good.
Now, I know that a few people might not be, from my show, might not be familiar with you guys and what your show's about. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your show?
Well, it's a bi-weekly show where Morgan and I discuss politics, religion, and current events. And a lot of times what we do is, take a current event and try to use it as a springboard to talk about something bigger. For example, when the Trump tape came out, the grab him by the pussy one, we went into the whole notion of rape culture. And that's basically it. And also sometimes I put like a funny little skit that I write and produce in the middle of it. So that's basically the gist of it.
Okay. Now, I know both of you, before you started the Bi Skeptical podcast, you've both been on other podcasts and had other blogs and stuff before. So, Trav, what were you doing before you started the Bi Skeptical podcast?
I was doing a couple of things. Like, I actually got my podcasting start in Christian podcasting. Like, I first had like a little podcast of my own called Coffee Chats, where I would talk to different progressive Christian bloggers that I liked. But then I was invited to co-host a progressive Christian podcast called Something Beautiful. And I was there for about a good year and a half, and then I got burned out and hung up a microphone. And then I started the By Any Means podcast about 2 years ago. Yeah, it's been 2 years since then. And how Bi Skeptical came about is bisexuals, we love bisexual puns. And so I thought, Bi Skeptical, that'd be a really great pun. And so I wanted to do something with that. But I thought, well, I don't really I don't want to rebrand my podcast, since I've already sort of established By Any Means as like the brand name, I didn't want to switch it. So I thought, maybe I'll do like a sister podcast with Bi Skeptical. And so I just posted something on my Facebook wall where I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing a sister podcast called Bi Skeptical. I'm not really quite sure what to do with it. Do any of my other bisexual atheist friends want to chime in? Morgan's like, yeah, I'll do it. So that's how that came about.
Okay.
Now, Morgan... and I was on No Religion Required before. Okay. And I started getting into podcasting. I was actually a guest on No Religion Required, talking about my experiences at French Camp Academy, which is a Christian hardcore evangelical boarding school in Mississippi. And I was just a guest to talk about that experience. And then I mentioned a story that I had, which was they had a job that you had to do. You had to do work crew, which you didn't get paid for any of your work, but they needed somebody for the radio station. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll get to be on the radio. I'll get to be on air. I've always wanted to do that. And then I found out later they were just having me clean it.
Nice.
Nothing to do with the equipment or anything. And so I was really disappointed, and I told that story on No Religion Required, and I got a call from Bobby C. about a week later, and he said, hey, do you want to come on and be a regular, co-host with it? And so I agreed to that, and I was a co-host on No Religion Required for, I think, about a good almost 40 episodes. And I still I've done a guest spot since then, but I'm skeptical now.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, I think both of you, don't you both also write for a couple of blogs? I know, Trav, I've seen you post a couple of articles. Morgan, were you writing for something too?
Yes, I was. I have written one blog post for removing the fig leaf, and then I was writing for bamsouth.com, which was much more of a libertarian-leaning publication, which I used to be a libertarian, but I'm not anymore. But that's how I made the connection with the editor, Jack Criss, and he wanted a more liberal voice on there because it was so many libertarians and more right-wing people. And so I was just there, and I blogged a few times, but I'm just out of time. I'm a law student right now, and I'm actually trying to get published, so that's taken up most of my time now.
Oh, okay. And Trav, where do you write for?
My blog, by any means, is on Free Thought Blogs, which I know it has sort of a bad reputation for being, SJW central, but like I sometimes go to the slime pit and they're like, well, gee, Trav doesn't seem as SJW-y as all the other people on there, so I guess I'm doing something right. And I was contributing to thehumanist.com. I haven't written anything for them since May. I should probably write something for them soon, but I'm not really quite sure what though. So those are my main outlets. For a while also I was a contributing writer to queerika.com, which is the part of the Skepchick blog network. Queerika focuses more on LGBT issues. Since I've been writing for Free Thought Blogs, I left Queerika. That's mainly it. I've done like a few guest posts on different people's blogs.
Okay. Let's see. And I know, I'm trying to think of some other questions to ask before I get into some of the episodes that I've gotten to listen to. Unfortunately, there's so many great podcasts out there. I don't get to catch them all. I was really enjoying you guys' grievance Festivus episode. that was a pretty good one there. Were there any grievances that you guys happened to miss? Maybe when you were airing them out.
There was one that I wrote on my Facebook wall shortly after, and that was basically my own fuck ups as an activist, because I've, there have been times when, I had the opportunity to talk about race with some of my coworkers, but didn't. And, there have been a few instances where, I basically went into, a Facebook group and basically wanted them to cater to my feelings, even though, it wasn't the place for that, centering myself, and so that was basically the only grievance I think I missed on the show, but that's because I didn't think about it until after it.
Oh, okay. And what about you, Morgan? Did you have any grievances that you missed? Can she still hear me? Uh-oh, we just lost her. I guess we just lost her. Oh, no.
Yeah, I was wondering why her picture was... Okay, I think she might be trying to come back now.
I think she's trying to come back. Oh, Morgan. There you are.
Oh, there she is.
Lost you there for a minute. Uh-oh, now I can't hear. Hang on, let me... I've got video on Morgan, but I've got no audio right now, which is kind of strange on my end. I don't think it's on my side this time, though. Yeah, I'm almost as famous as Bobby's
equipment issues.
Yeah, I had to do a whole take too, Well, when I recorded it, it would have been last night with Uber 47. So.
Oh, okay.
The first one we did, I was on Skype, and the Skype kept crapping out, and so we switched to Hangouts, and it was a mess.
Right. Yeah. I recently interviewed my friend Farah Shaw, who's an ex-Muslim and also contributes to Kavi Musavi's blog on Pathos, On the Margin of Error. And she kept having a bunch of audio issues on her end. So probably when the episode airs Thursday, expect like a lot of places where voice is chopped up. I tried to edit it so that I close the little gaps in between where it gets choppy, where it's like literally like that's the story.
Yeah, I've had that happen a couple of times.
Right, so it sounds more like that's the story.
Yeah, good old auto-tune there. Oh,
right,
geez.
Definitely.
Oh, so you said you've been doing the By Skeptical or the By Any Means now for about 2 years?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Now what's the focus on mostly on the By Any Means podcast while we're waiting for Morgan to try to come back?
She just popped a message. Can y'all still not hear me? Nope, still can't. No sound.
That was me.
Oh, okay. That's her. Okay. So By Any Means, the original tagline was, the place where social justice and humanism meet. It's since become simply, the musings of a queer humanist, because I don't always talk about social justice issues, even though I think it's all connected, really. Basically that one, the By Skeptical podcast is more of a news commentary show, whereas By Any Means is more interview based. And so for By Any Means, I interview bloggers, podcasters, writers, activists, and artists, and sometimes scientists, and just talk about atheism, secularism, social justice, humanism, art, science, basically whatever. Basically just talk to people that I want to talk to, and people who, aren't really that big. Sometimes I've had I've had big names like David Silverman and Seth Andrews, but I also try to get more, people who aren't really known in the movement as well, just to show, give a platform to those whose voices aren't being heard that much, and also basically breaking the stereotype that the atheist community is just a bunch of, white cis straight guys.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something that I'm trying to do on this show too. Is I mainly want to get people's their stories, their kind of like the origin stories, kind of,
yes.
And also talk about things that you guys are maybe interested in outside of podcasting. Like I know Morgan
right.
Is also a law student, and she's working on getting her degree. What other things do you do besides the podcast?
My day job is I work at a local county board of elections. I won't name the exact county just in case any trolls want to stalk me and all that stuff. But that's my day job. As far as other stuff, and I think Morgan's finally back. Hi, Morgan. You
hey,
there?
Morgan. Still no audio.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess I'll just keep talking to fill up dead air. Let's see, where was
Damn it,
I?
Barbie.
Well, I actually am starting a local humanist group.
Oh, cool.
In the area, because I live in Maryland's Eastern Shore area, which is pretty rural and fairly conservative. I mean, it's not exactly Bible Belt where, the first thing people ask you is, where do you go to church? But, it's still pretty conservative, and it's a very don't ask, don't tell region, not just for atheism, but also for, sexuality and gender identity. A very, I'm okay with it as long as I don't have to see it kind of thing.
Right.
And so with the Trump election, I decided, you know what, I think we're really going to have to need to form a secular community where, we can meet and have there's that social justice buzzword, safe space. We can talk and also try to do things in the community. Right now we're just having monthly meetings at the local pub, so nothing that extravagant, but it's still in the works. I'm still trying to figure out how all this stuff works, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, my brother-in-law is actually from somewhere close to you. He's originally from Delaware.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
the eastern side of Delaware. He was going to I forget what the name of the high school was out there, but they built a new it's almost like a VOTEC high school.
Oh, really?
And so, of course, that was many moons ago.
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay, what about now?
There you are.
Yay!
All right.
Yay! There we go. Right.
Okay, I just had to restart my computer. It was just being very strange.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
I blame Bill Gates.
Yeah, send him a bill.
Definitely. So Morgan, I know that you're wearing a lot of hats too. What kind of things are you doing outside of the whole podcast sphere? I mean, I know that you're working on law school. Are there any other things that you're doing outside of the internet world?
Yes. Well, I'm a law student at the University of Mississippi, and I'm involved in a whole lot of things there. Yeah, we our football team did not pull out this year. It was
at least you didn't have as bad a breakdown as the Hogs did this year. I mean, that was horrible. It was so embarrassing.
Yeah, well, y'all usually ruin our bowl dreams for us, but yeah. So I go there, and last semester I was working with a justice clinic, which focuses on civil rights issues and criminal justice issues, especially affecting areas such as race. I actually got to go to death row at Parchman, which is our state penitentiary, last semester. That was pretty intense. And it's not like on the movies where, there's a bunch of men yelling at you and screaming at you. It's actually very eerily quiet. So I did work with that, just focusing in on civil rights and criminal justice reform, because nobody in the state of Mississippi was, doing certain practices right. And we had, correct that and be like, hey guys, you're doing stuff wrong. And so we were the people that came in and told them that. And usually, you'll want to, a lot of these people are willing to correct it because they have no idea, if they're doing things incorrectly. But, well, I'm just a law student, and I'm also in the Mississippi Law Journal trying to get published. I'm also the secretary of our LGBTQ group, which is called Outlaw. And I believe it's at a different amount of universities and law schools, but that's our group. And I'm the secretary of it. So we've organized things such as a protest last semester against HB 1523, which was effectively a law that said you can discriminate against people if they have sex before marriage or if they're transgender or LGBTQ.
One of those religious freedom bills.
Yes. Yeah, religious freedom bill is what they called it, and they made it so obvious it was a theocrat move. They're like, well, Jesus only created 2 genders, and we were like, that's bullshit. Said, was our governor and all that stuff, and it was in glitter, and it was amazing. So we do that. We organized the first ever Pride, and unfortunately I couldn't go because I had a final literally the next day at 8 a.m. So so I couldn't go, but we did help get the word out about the first ever Pride that happened there. And there was, of course, a few, evangelical asshats that showed up to yell at people, but, I think they were definitely outnumbered, which is a good sign.
That is a good sign. So why don't we go ahead while I've got you guys here? And like I said, I also like to try to get origin stories. So Trav, can you kind of tell us because you said you were a Christian podcaster and blogger before you jumped over with the rest of us to the dark side. Can you kind of give us a little bit of your, I guess, your deconversion experience?
Well,
I mean, if it's too personal, you don't have to jump into it.
No, that's fine. It's just that it's going to be very long. That's all.
Nothing but time.
Let's see here. Well, I was raised as a wedding and funeral Christian, as I like to call it. We didn't go to church unless someone got either married or buried. And then in high school, I went through a short period where I was a Wiccan, a pagan, even though that didn't really struck. But then I turned to Christianity when I was 17 because I've always had problems with depression and self-harm. And so Jesus seemed like the only thing that was helping, that gave me hope. And so I became a born-again Christian. I was always sort of conflicted because I knew that I was supposed to be this conservative biblical literalist, but even in the back of my head, I was like, well, I don't know. The facts don't seem to be matching, the Bible doesn't seem to be matching, reality as I'm perceiving it. Then I sort of drifted more into liberal Christianity, and the emergent Christian movement, like, Brian McLaren,
Marcus
Rob
Ford.
Bell. Yeah, those types. And so I slowly started deconstructing my sort of evangelicalism. And it didn't help also at the time that I was engaged to this woman that came from a very patriarchal Calvinist family, and so she, her and her family put a lot of pressure on me to man up and be the man of God that God commanded me to be, and so that brought up a lot of stuff. And so, but eventually, I broke up with her, and kind of going more into liberal Christianity until I read, it's going to sound cliche, but yes, Dawkins did have an impact on my faith, but it wasn't God's Illusion first. I actually read The Magic of Reality, and just him saying that, all these beautiful things in life can be explained by science. And then I also started watching clips of him on YouTube. Like, I remember a big one for me was a debate he did. It was like him, Daniel Dennett, Ben Carson, and Francis Collins. And at the time I was, being in that liberal Christian camp, I was of the I was in the camp that believed that, God started the whole evolution thing, and then then natural selection took over. Mm-hmm. And so I watched this debate thinking that, Francis Collins, who, is a Christian but believes, definitely accepts evolution as a scientific fact, was going to cream Dawkins. But Dawkins kept saying, where's the evidence for God? Where's the evidence? I was like, well, evidence? Let me get back to you on that one. And so I just started exploring the questions more and started deconstructing more of my faith until one day God just disappeared,
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Morgan, what about you? I know you've probably told your story a few times, but in case someone out on my side of the podcast hasn't quite heard it, what was your story?
Okay, well, I grew up in an evangelical family, Southern Baptist. So you can imagine everything was brimstone and hellfire kind of thing. And at first, my family wasn't super, super into it. I had a few super religious family members, but then, it was like how a lot of Southern Baptists, they'll go and get baptized like 3 or 4 times kind of thing. So it's
just
like, okay,
sure.
we're going to start going to church hardcore. Yeah, just to make sure we'll go to heaven and not hell,
Mm-hmm.
So, because they talk about it all the time. And so I was struggling with depression, anxiety, ADHD kind of thing. And I mean, it's a scary thing, especially when your child's going through that and you have no experience. And especially down here in the South, it's especially it's across the country, but especially down here in the South, you don't talk about mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
So everything's like demons or some shit down here. So it's, I did not know what to do. So, and me and my stepmom were not getting along. We have never gotten along. Yeah, so he sent me to French Camp Academy, which is an evangelical boarding school. He thought that was best for me. And so I went through that, and it was heavy indoctrination. I mean, it was basically being sent to like a Mormon compound, but it was Southern Baptist, or they claimed to be non-denomination core Presbyterian. They were so hardcore that the main Presbyterian church split off from them.
Oh, wow.
Over the LGBT stuff, because they thought that the mainline Presbyterian church was too liberal. That's how conservative this place was. I was literally taught that Obama is the Antichrist. I was taught that in school.
Wow.
And apparently, yeah, they have not lost their accreditation because they're a private school and they have no oversight, so they can, teach me whatever hell they want to. But also, the area where my family is from, they do not have really good public schools, so I essentially had to go to a private school, and it probably overall was a better education than I would have received at a lot of those other places. But with the added Obama's the Antichrist, by the way, here's some algebra. So that was a bit strange. This is like Christian worldview and Christian family living, where I was taught, why all the other religions are stupid and all this stuff. And that sort of piqued an interest in philosophy for me. And it turned out what I was taught, I was taught that creationism was logical. And then community college, and I realized that the school I went to was not normal. I guess. I mean, I'd always had that feeling, but I was like, okay, well, I probably have some baggage from that place, so here's what I'm going to do. And I took everything I believed in. And at the time, I never really bought into the whole, like, super hardcore conservative. I was always a little bit more liberal, but I was really big into the Libertarian Party, all that kind of stuff. So eventually, and this took place, I think I finally got out of everything towards the end of my junior year. And I was just like, I'm going to look at all my beliefs, my political beliefs, my religious beliefs, everything, and I'm going to, research it. And I'm going to ask myself, does this make sense? And as a child, I'd always read everything I could get my hands on, even if it was about philosophy and things like that. So I was just going back to that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, this is all bullshit. And I kind of it was a slow deconversion process, because then I became one of those liberal Christians where I was like, oh, well, if you're a good Muslim, you go to Muslim heaven. And if you're a good Jew, you go to Jew heaven. And then eventually I was like, no, this is all bullshit. And I was like, okay, well, maybe God's real, but he doesn't care about us, individually in the world. And so I went from that process of atheist to theist to, deist to agnostic. And really the latter part of my agnosticism was really because I was scared to say the word atheist, because as you know, down here, that's a bad word.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a bad word. So I didn't want to say I'm an atheist. And what I'm saying, when I say agnostic, people don't freak out because they're like, oh, well, at least you're keeping an open mind. And then eventually I was like, and I started listening to Cognitive Dissonance, actually, weirdly enough, when I was still a believer somewhat. So, and they make all the dick jokes or whatever, but then, they'll say something, and I was just like, wow, that really doesn't make sense. Why would I ever believe that? It seems silly when you think about it. And so I just kind of came out of that, and it was obviously a lot of brainwashing, indoctrination I had to get over, and eventually I turned on the Libertarian Party, and I turned on, my religion, and I just was like, I came out of that closet with a flamethrower.
Now, for you guys, I know that you're out in the podcast world, but in your personal lives, have you also come out as atheists? And if so, have you had any kind of blowback from it? I mean, has there been, friendships or families that kind of split, or?
Well, my parents are really cool about it, fortunately. They're both Christians. Well, at least my mom and my stepdad. My biological father's an atheist, so he's definitely proud of me. But my mom and my stepdad, they're not like hardcore fundamentalists or anything like that. They attend an evangelical Lutheran Church of America, which they're slightly more liberal.
Yeah, they're I think they're just a step below the Whiskey Palians, if I remember rightly.
Right, exactly. And so they're totally cool with me being queer. And so I think the only sort of pushback I got for being an atheist is that, during my times in the progressive Christian podcasting world, I have lost contact with a couple of people that I've met through that, but it's not really too big of a deal. I actually have an interesting story. I don't know if you're familiar with Rachel Held Evans. She's a progressive Christian blogger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I discovered her blog right around the time she signed the contract for her first book, Evolving in Monkeytown, which is her memoir. And we used to be really close friends, but then after her second book came out, which was A Year in Biblical Womanhood, where she decided to take a cue from H.A. Jacobs and live out all the biblical commandments for women, literally for like 1 year. She became a lot more famous. She appeared on The View, and she stopped returning my emails. And so that's when I knew it's like, yep, it's in Christianity, both evangelical and liberal, you're nobody until you've written a book. So that's been the only kind of, lost ties that I personally experienced.
Okay. Morgan, I'm pretty sure that, judging from your history, that it probably went over really well when you came out.
Oh, yeah, super well. So I was open to some. See, I live in Oxford, Mississippi, which, is home to Ole Miss and all that. So we do have a more liberal pocket here.
At least it's not Jacksonville.
College campus.
At least it's not Jackson.
At least it's not Jackson, which is where my family's from.
I'm sorry. No offense, but I've been to Jackson, and that's where I had some. Well, that was kind of a weird story of its own. But a former who I thought was my half sister was from there. So.
Oh, weird. Yeah. So, my family's from there, and then my paternal grandmother is from Arcadiana, Louisiana. So, like, middle of Cajun country, so you can imagine. Well, I'm not out technically to my grandparents because both my grandmothers would just, lose their shit completely. And, I mean, they barely know how to use the internet, so
you're safe.
Or a phone. So it's like, so I'm pretty safe there. And my dad actually found out because somebody from French camp came across the No Religion Required podcast. And they emailed it to him and said, you need to disown her, and you need to, basically pray that bad things happen to her so she'll come back to Jesus because her life will fall apart. Because that's such a loving Christian thing to do.
Yeah.
So that happened, and my dad, and it was so awkward. So I have no idea that he had even gotten this email, and so I go and I meet him up front in Jackson, and we sit down. He goes, I'm just praying for you, and I'm like, pretending I'm still a Christian, and I'm all like, well, that's all we can do, Daddy. Being the good Southern Baptist I've always been. And then my dad goes, yeah, I know you're an atheist, and then I immediately feel like really stupid. So he was like, yeah, I know you're an atheist and I know you're bisexual, but there's no reason, we can't have lunch together and I still love you. And he told me what that person said, and he said, but you're my daughter and I'm proud of you. And he's like, I don't care what those people say. He's like, now I don't approve. He did that whole I don't approve of your lifestyle thing, but it's a step forward. At least he didn't shun me completely, because my heart dropped into my stomach when he said I know, and it was the most horrible feeling. But he knows, but of course he hasn't gone around blabbing being like, my daughter's an atheist, because that's not really a cool thing to say in the South.
Yeah.
My grandmother doesn't know, even though she goes to the most liberal church I have ever attended in the South. I don't even think she's aware of what church she's going into. They're really Episcopalian-like, though they claim they're a Baptist church, but they've been kicked out of every Baptist convention they've ever been a part of.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, because
That's quite
they're
an
super
accomplishment.
progressive. And they're all into the, today's the, sixth day of Lent and all that stuff. So I was just like, I kept telling my grandmother, I'm like, you're not a Baptist. I hope you know that. But so they don't know. But other than that, I'm pretty open with my friends and, people at law school. And, I don't go around being like, I'm an atheist. Your God isn't real. Like, people would expect. But at least down here, that's what they think an atheist is. But when they found out, I noticed they're just like, oh, I was always taught that atheists were, super mean and super, rude and would scream at me. And you're a normal person. So I feel like it's kind of normalizing it a bit.
Yeah, I think that once people, it's kind of like with the LGBT movement, that as we start coming out as atheists more and, starting to normalize it more, that I think people are going to start accepting it a little bit more maybe. There are some hurdles that we've got that I think the LGBT community didn't quite have, because there's the whole, well, where do you get your morals argument. I know you guys haven't heard that one.
Never. What?
Oh, it's been one of my favorites. I think my favorite coming out thing as an atheist was, I work for, I can't say the name of it, but it is a Catholic hospital. And when I started working there, I was a liberal Christian, and I kind of had the epiphany while I was at work at my desk during a conversation with somebody. And so now I was trying to keep it kind of hush-hush, but at the same time, I'm really loud on Facebook, and I've got the podcast going now. And so one of the people that I work with came up to me one day and went, "Are you an atheist?" And I went, "Shh, I'm undercover." I'm undercover, and don't say anything.
The same thing happened to me, actually. I was there's about a dozen atheists here in Mississippi. And so I was going to a meetup they had in North Mississippi. And this is actually how I met my friend Rakeem, who coincidentally happened to go to French Camp Academy just like I did. And just out of the blue, and he lives in the same town I do. So the chances of that were just crazy. But I go up to the door of a restaurant we're supposed to eat. And I'm like, "Are you here for the meeting?" And then he goes, "What meeting?" And I'm like, "The meeting." "What meeting?" And it went back and forth about this for about 2 minutes. And finally I was like, fuck it. What are they going to do? Throw a beer bottle at me? So I said, "The atheist meeting." And he was like, "Oh, you're Morgan. Hey, nice to meet you." And it was just funny because for 2 minutes we were just like, the meeting, because neither of us wanted to say it out loud.
Yeah, it's kind of like Baptist at the liquor store. That's the whole reason. Yeah, well, that's the whole reason. I don't know if you guys have them in Mississippi, but in Arkansas, we've got the drive-through windows in the liquor store. Mm-hmm. Have you seen those?
Oh, we have them in Louisiana, but over here, actually, we have still dry counties. Mm-hmm. And that's because when they were thinking of legalizing the liquor, all the Baptist ladies got very upset because their husbands were all bootleggers and that would take away their business. But they claimed it was for Jesus.
Yes. Yeah, we had kind of the same thing here. But all of the liquor stores in Arkansas will have a drive-through window at the side, and that's so that the Baptists can go through and not have to be seen rolling in.
It's hilarious.
It's like the old joke, the difference between a Catholic and a Baptist?
No, I don't.
Catholics will acknowledge each other in the liquor store.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah, it's funny how that works. And it just tells you sort of a hypocrisy sort of the whole religious culture, which I'd always seen when I was a kid, knowing those rules and stuff. And then eventually when I was a teenager, I was told, "Oh, we're Southern Baptists. Y'all can't drink or dance." And I was like, well, that's all we do. We're all going to hell.
That actually reminds me of a joke. The joke is this. There was a small town where it was very low economy, and they only had two churches, a Baptist church and a Methodist church. And even the pastors of both churches didn't really have a lot of money, so they would, travel on bicycle. And every Sunday, before they had church at, each respective congregation, the Baptist preacher and the Methodist preacher would meet each other in the park to discuss theology and whatnot. And, they always rode their bikes there. And so one Sunday, the Methodist shows up on his bike, but the Baptist arrives on foot, and so the Methodist preacher says, well, where's your bicycle? And the Baptist preacher says, I think somebody stole it. The Methodist preacher says, you think it was someone in your church? And the Baptist preacher says, yes, I think so. And the Methodist preacher says, well, here's what you do. Today, you go, when you get behind the podium, just really hammer the 10 Commandments on them. I mean, make them smell that fire and brimstone. Make them wail with each commandment you say. And when you get to thou shalt not steal, whoever stole your bike will admit it. Will jump up and admit it. And so, the next Sunday, the Baptist preacher arrives on his bike, and so the Methodist preacher says, oh, so it looks like my plan worked. And the Baptist says, well, not exactly. Once I got to thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered where I left my bike.
Oh.
Wow.
That's a good one. That's a good one, and very fitting. Very fitting.
Oh, jeez. So are you guys, either of you planning on going to, or trying to go to ReasonCon this year? I know I'm not going to get to make it, but were you guys planning on going?
I will be there.
Oh, cool. Yeah, maybe you guys can send me a sticker or something.
I'll send you a t-shirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I really need is a couple more stickers for the swag for my my laptop. I've got a collection going on the behind the monitor of my laptop where I'm putting the different breweries that I've been to and the different places, and so I'm trying to turn it into like a guitar case.
Nice. Yeah, we have a few good breweries down here in Mississippi. What about you, Trav? Do you know of any good breweries up in Maryland?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there's one in Cambridge, which is just about 10 miles from where I live. It's RAR, and they have this great IPA called Nanticoke Nectar, named after the Nanticoke River here. And it has a very, I guess I can call it a roasted taste to it. That's the only way I can describe it. But yeah, if you like IPAs with that very hoppy taste to it, you'll love it.
Okay. Since we've gone on to my favorite subject, that's why I've got the moniker. Well, one of them. What do you guys, as far as beers go, what are some of the better beers that you've had down the stripe? I know you were talking about the IPA, Trav. Is there another one maybe that you've had recently?
Well, let's see here. I like Dogfish Head, especially their 90-minute IPA. That's some good stuff. I don't drink as much beer as I used to because I have a very small apartment with a very small refrigerator, and so I can't really stack a lot of six-packs in there as much as I used to. There's this one beer, though, that I had that Dogfish Head has. It's called Higher Math. It's 17% alcohol per volume.
Oh.
And oh yes, and I made the mistake of drinking that while I was doing another interview. This guy Damien Adhope was interviewing me for his video podcast that he did, and about halfway through, I think I just started answering his questions with simple little yes or no answers because I was so tipsy that he would talk instead of me commenting saying, yeah, I know what you mean because da 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 da, I would just go, yeah.
I love you, man. Well, how about you, Morgan? Are you much of a beer drinker?
Yes, I am. I'm a law student, of course. We're basically all alcoholics. There's more truth to that than I care to admit. But so I really like Sweetwater Blue. It comes from I guess it would be the I'm trying to remember the name of the brewery. I want to say it's a Sweetwater brewery, but it's like a blueberry ale. It's really good. Okay. I can't drink too many of them because eventually they'll start tasting like Fruit Loops, and I'm just like, I need to hold off on that. I'm a really big fan of Abita products. They're a brewery out of Louisiana.
I think I've had a couple
I remember
of their
in
beers.
Jackson, everybody would go crazy for the strawberry. But again, that's one of those beers like I can't drink more than like 2 of, or I'm just like, oh, I feel like I just dunked my face in a bowl of like sugary cereal. And then I'm a big fan of Lazy Magnolia down here. They have a really good sweet potato stout. Okay. It's excellent. And then they have another one called Southern Pecan, which is just a really good amber beer. And you don't, I remember one time I was at a bar and I asked what kind of amber beers they had, and they said Budweiser. And I was just like, okay, that's my cue to go. I was like, Budweiser is not an amber beer. Who is running this establishment, sir? And so, yeah, it's good to see that there's more breweries coming out here, because it used to be against the law. You know, they would only have a few, you know, it would only be like, what do you got? Bud Light and PBR. That's all we serve, you know. And now it's just exploded, and it's done a lot, really, for the economy here. We have another one actually down the road from me, same county, Yallabusha Brewery. They're well known for their IPAs, and they have an amber beer called Copperhead. I'm not as much a fan of IPAs. I don't like anything super hoppy, but I will drink the Abita Andigator. That's gotten me in trouble a few more times than I care to admit, but it's one of those high gravity ones. I remember the day, actually, I'll never forget. It was the day that it became legal in Mississippi to have the high gravity beers. And I had a boss that was, he was telling me all kinds of things. He was like, back when I was at this strip club in 1993, and I was like, okay, now I see why maybe they made it against the law. Because I was like, go home. Like, what are you doing? But, yeah, it's been really good for the economy here, and we have a lot of awesome ones on the coast. Southern Prohibition Company makes a good amber called Fire Ant. Susie B is another good pale ale they make. And on the coast, they have a really good one, the Biloxi Brewing Company down there. So, yeah, it's been a lot in Mississippi recently. We've just been, you know, popping them out, and I hope to see them spread.
Yeah, well, here up in Walmart Mecca, Benton County was dry forever. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah. Fayetteville, down where University of Arkansas is at, was just south of us. They were a wet county. But Benton County, because we have John Brown University, a beautiful Southern Baptist college named after a terrorist.
Yes. Yes.
But they had a pretty good handle on it for a while. But Walmart has this, and it's why I call it Walmart Mecca, is because Walmart has this great rule, and I think I told Morgan about it, that any vendors that sell products through Walmart, so people like Sony, DreamWorks, Sunbeam, RCA, whoever, they have to have a business office within driving distance of Walmart's home office. So anybody who sells anything at Walmart, they have an office in Bentonville. And that's brought in a whole plethora of people, caused an explosion here. And then, so finally there was enough that the county finally went wet, and we've just had this explosion of craft breweries there've been some awesome breweries going through here. And I discovered that trying to drink craft beer and wasn't keeping up with my wallet, so I started brewing my own. So now, you know, if I can't get it, I'll just go, okay, well, let me find a recipe and I'll go and make it. Here we go. Get the bathtub out. But yeah, I just finally, another great thing that I got for Christmas, I got a keg, the ability to keg my home brews now, so I can have 5 gallons of something on tap at all times.
Oh, that's nice. Is it very expensive to do that, or?
The way that I do it's not really, because I do what's called a brew in a bag, which is basically,
okay.
Yeah, you throw everything into like a mesh bag and let it steep like it's an all grain beer, and then you go through all of the other stuff with it. I think a batch of beer, I can usually make 5 gallons of a good craft beer for, you know, $30 or so, and that gets you basically 3 cases of beer.
Oh, that's nice.
You know,
yeah, there's a few people that have started experimenting about that, and they have, you know, festivals where you'll get to sample everything, and they'll have beer festivals here. So it's been, like you said, you know, the money eventually it talks, and I think that's the same we're seeing with a lot of other issues here. You know, the LGBT stuff too. It's like money talks, and eventually you're gonna have to give in.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually.
Some are slower than others. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw here in Arkansas, little town called, I think, Bryant here. We had a school board member of their of their school
Yes.
that for Halloween did blackface.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that happened up
Yeah,
here.
isn't he outstanding member of the year or something like that?
Yeah, he
Didn't
was
get an
awarded as
award?
outstanding school board member of the year yesterday. Yeah, and I'm like, what, guys? This is why people don't like us.
Yeah, but I heard that there were protests outside, and they kept the protesters out. But at least there were people that showed up to protest.
Yeah, they sent it to a small venue where you can only get like 25 people in there to give him the award, and I mean they jumped over backwards to be able to hand it to him. I'm like, guys, no. But
Yeah, it sounds like here it's the opposite. It's like whoever teaches the most about Jesus in the public school gets the best teacher award. It's
oh Lord, we're still fighting that. I can't believe we're still fighting that argument. Some of the stuff. I'm actually going to run for the school board this year for the city of Rogers, and I mean some of the stuff that they keep trying to throw prayer in different places. It's like, no, you can't do that. Oh, but you atheists just want to take God out of school. Yeah. You say that like it's a bad thing.
How very astute of you. Yeah, we have one county here in Mississippi. I don't know, Trav, how bad it is up there in Maryland, but we have one county, Rankin County. I used to live there. It's south of Jackson, and they cannot comprehend the meaning of separation between church and state. And they had been warned by a federal judge. Because there was a plaintiff, and they said, I just want them to stop. I don't want money. I just want them to stop. And so they agreed to it. There's a settlement about it. And eventually got to the point where apparently one of the high schools was planning on doing a formation on the football field at a cross and playing a bunch of gospel songs, because nothing gets you excited about football like how great thou art. Am I right?
Oh yeah.
So and then the judge found out about it before it happened, and he was like, oh, I dare them. Basically, he's like, go ahead, see what happens. And they canceled it, and of course they went to the media, and they're like, they're oppressing us Christians, blah blah blah. And they did, I can't remember what else they did, but they did something. I think it was they invited a minister to come and tell everybody they were going to hell, and it was a mandatory assembly. And the judge was like, I have bent over backwards for you. Mm-hmm. And one of the attorneys I know, she got her car paid off from that case. So, and it's just, they'll spend so much money defending this shit too. And I'm just like, why? You've lost. Teach your kids that bullshit at home. How bad is it up there for you, Trav?
You know what? I don't really think there's a lot. I'm not really quite sure, because I went to high school on the other side of the Bay Bridge. I live on the east side of the Bay Bridge, but I grew up closer to Washington D.C., and I don't remember a lot of proselytizing there. Nothing people inviting preachers in and all that stuff. So I don't know what it's like here on the Eastern Shore. I do know that there was a lawsuit a couple of months ago against the local county school board, because there was a transgender boy who, even though, excuse me, Maryland, we don't have any bathroom bills here, the school board tried to make this transgender boy use the ladies' room and the ladies' locker room instead of the men's room. And so there was a bit of a lawsuit about that, and I know a lot of LGBT activists went to the school board meeting around that particular time. I don't really know what the outcome of that is. I'll have to double check.
Okay. Yeah, I know we've had some issues with that, with the separation of church and state, and it's really fun because you try to be, reasonable with them and say, well, think about it this way. What if it was someone that was, the teacher was a Muslim and they were having the kids on the prayer rug facing east, and praying to Mecca, and they're like, oh, well, they're praying to a false god, so that doesn't count.
Yeah, but mine's real.
Yeah, we got to pray to Jesus because he's the real God. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of get through to people that have that mindset that, you know, logic and reason just aren't gonna touch it because they just can't see through it. So have you guys had any, before we close up, have you guys been able to get into any good discussions or arguments about whether or not, with your friends, about whether or not God exists?
Well, I don't really get into a lot of debates with friends about it. I mean, we definitely talk about it, but it's more of like a conversation rather than an outright debate. Maybe it's because the few religious people that I know are pretty okay. Like, I have made friends with a local barista at the coffee shop here. Her mother is actually the local Methodist minister, and we've actually had a lot of good conversations. Not a lot of debates, but just conversations of, like, you know, where she asks me where I'm coming from, I ask her where she's coming from, and we definitely bonded over the fact that, you know, we both discussed it about how so many evangelical Christians, you know, basically bow down and kiss Trump's ass, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like going back to the Trump tape earlier, you know, how so when that came out, so many evangelical Christians were saying, you know, well, we're all sinners. God is bigger than our sins, except Bill Clinton. Fuck him, you know? And
well, I think that's what got him in trouble, though. That's what got Bill Clinton in trouble, though. How about you, Morgan?
Well, I'm actually dating a Christian because I hate myself.
Don't feel bad. I'm married to one.
Yeah, and I finally got him to admit he's a Democrat because he kept saying, I love Bernie Sanders. And I would say, but you say you're a Republican. I was like, honey, you're not a Republican. You're Bernie Sanders. And I had to explain to him, but he believed the NRA bullshit that, you know, they're coming for us hunting rifles and, you know, all that bullshit. So I was like, Obama would have came and got them, I don't know, like anytime sooner than his last 10 days. And so I got him to finally admit he's a Democrat. He's like, I'm a Democrat, fine, but don't go around telling everybody. So he's on board with that. He's more of a progressive Christian for sure, but I will say comments and I'll listen to Cognitive Dissonance in the car, and he thinks they're funny. Mm-hmm. Like, he legit thinks they're funny and stuff like that. And he will kind of like sort of ask questions, and I'll say things. He'll be like, well, I guess that's a good point. You know, that doesn't make any sense. And, you know, he'll give little jabs at me. And his main thing is, I can't imagine a world where, you know, I didn't believe in anything. You know, like there's no hope after death or any of that. And I'm just like, well, that's, you know, the beauty in it for me, because I believe, you know, well, why not make the world a better place while we're here?
Exactly.
And, you know, enjoy the one life you have and stop worrying about, you know, where you're going after you die. Just be present in the moment on this earth. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that we kind of can appreciate, you know, both of the, you know, points we make. So that's been interesting, but, you know, we'll both have jokes for each other, me more so than him, but...
Yeah, I think my favorite is I jumped in on a conversation on I think it was my stepmother's Facebook post, because she posted Pascal's wager. And
did she know it was Pascal's wager?
She didn't know what was Pascal's wager, you know, because I come from I was an Episcopalian / Gnostic for a while before I finally crossed over to the dark side, but I was raised backwoods Pentecostal. So, yeah. So they were like using the Pascal's wager. I said, well, that's called. I explained that this is called Pascal's wager, and it's one of my. They know I'm an atheist, and it was like, and this is why it is my least favorite argument that you can use on a non-believer. And I started trying to spell out, you know, these are at least 3 arguments I can come up with against it, and just could not get through. It just was not computing. And they're like, but our Jesus is real. And I'm like, okay, that's not what I'm saying. Is that I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. I'm telling you what someone who doesn't believe is going to tell you, and why you should not use this argument, because it's horrible.
Right.
You know, it is the worst.
Right.
It's funny to me when people too fat.
Yeah, I always respond, okay, well, what if you picked the wrong God, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard to argue with them, though, when they say, well, I didn't pick the wrong God because my God's the real one. It's like,
how do you know?
You're missing the point.
The Bible told me.
Because the Bible told me so. Well, how do you know the Bible's true? Because it's the Word of God. How do you know it's the Word of God? Because it says so. Does this? Are you not seeing that this is a circular argument that you're talking about? Well, it's a circle.
I didn't pass no algebra, and it's like that's geometry, but okay.
I'm not illiterate. Damn it! I know who my parents are.
Yeah, the unironic use of a Pascal's wager. I've seen that used before. You know, it's like, well, what if you're wrong? You know, what if you go to hell? And I'm like, well, I'll be with all my awesome atheist buddies.
Well,
Party
think about
in hell.
it. You're telling me that everybody that drinks, dances, does drugs, all the comedians, the actors, the musicians are all going to be. It's going to be a party, sure. I'd rather be there. You know, you make it sound great. It's like,
as long as.
Here's a good joke for Morgan here. You might appreciate this. God's, sitting up in heaven, and he decides he's going to go check out what's going on in hell. So he gets down there, and he notices it's pretty comfortable. It's cool. It's not fire and brimstone like he had created it. And he says, "All right, devil, what's going on here? I mean, I built this place to be punishment, and now, I mean, you guys have even got cable TV in here and everything. What's going on?" He says, "Well, God, you sent all of the scientists and engineers down here." And so they brought in air conditioning, and, we've got computers down here and all this good stuff. Now I've even got the internet. He says, now that's not how it's supposed to be. I'm going to have to punish, we're going to have to do a judgment on this. Devil looks at him and says, and where do you think you're going to get a lawyer?
Yes, I've heard all the lawyer jokes. I don't think there's a single lawyer joke I have not heard already because my grandfather used to work for them. So I know all of them.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's about time to close up here for the interview. So I'm gonna go ahead and say goodnight to you guys. Thank you both for coming on again. It's been really fun. Where can people find your podcast, or maybe if they want to ask you questions or get with you outside of the show? How can they contact you? How can they hear more?
Well, you can find the Bi Skeptical podcast on either iTunes, Spreaker, or Stitcher. You can follow us on Facebook at the Bi Skeptical Podcast, and we have a Twitter feed, Bi Skeptical Pod. I'm on Twitter as well at T Mamone, and I think that's most of it. Where can people find you online, Morgan?
All right. Well, you can email me, nrrmorgan@gmail.com, because I'm too lazy to change my email address. And then you can find me on Facebook, the Bi Skeptical Morgan, and on Twitter at MoString.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, thank you guys so much again for coming on here. It's been a blast, and hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime.
Yeah, great. So. Thanks for having us on.
All right. And so we'll see you guys later, and I'm going to close out the show tonight with our usual theme, Anacreon in Heaven. All right, good night, guys. All right, well, that was Morgan Stringer and Trav Mamone from the Bi Skeptical Podcast. I want to thank them again for coming on to the show tonight, and hopefully we can definitely do it again sometime. If you are a fan of the show and you want to help support us, you can either give us a 5-star review on iTunes, which would greatly help us get Skeptics Brew Pub to the top of the feed. If you want to help us out, help us keep the show going, also, you can donate a per-episode donation at patreon.com/Skeptics Brew Pub, where you can actually become a member of our irreligious order of Saint Hitchens, the Oh Shit. And you can do that, like I said, at Patreon for a per-episode donation. If you want to get a hold of, me, it's at you can find my email, Brother Brewer at skepticsbrewpub.com. Since this was recorded, this was actually recorded a couple of weeks ago, I didn't mention the Bozo of the Week in the show, so I'll probably tack that on in the in the show notes and on the website, which is at skepticsbrewpub.com. You can also find a link to the live show on Monday nights there, or at Spreaker.com/skeptics_brewpub, or Spreaker.com/user/skeptic_brewpub, or just go to skepticsbrewpub.com and the player is on the front page. If you also want to follow the show on Facebook, just go to facebook.com/beer and blasphemy. I'm Brother Brewer, and we'll see you next week.
To Anacreon in heaven, where he sat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that he their inspirer and patron would be. When this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian, voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus's vine. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle